What's up, guys, and welcome to the NFL Week 8 player pool. Going to take a look at DraftKings for Week 8 and figure out which players that we want to have in our player pool. And we have a couple games of the week or potential games of the week to focus on this week, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. Got a full slate of games this week on DraftKings, and it's just one of those Sundays where we got basically no teams on bye this week, and we got no London games or anything like that. So we got a full slate of games, and make sure to hit that like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video a little bit later on, recording this on Sunday morning. So got a lot of the news and injuries, at least an idea of what's happening with those injuries before we dig into this. And make sure to hit the subscribe on the YouTube channel. I'm looking for 1,100 subscribers, hopefully by the end of this week. I need about 30 left to get there. So hit that subscribe. Going to want to hit the subscribe anyways to get alerts when the shows come out and when the shorter videos come out, because I usually put the shorter videos out about an hour before lock. And when you hit that subscribe and you sign up for the alerts, then you can get a notification when that comes out. All right, guys. So we've got a big slate here. And let's start digging into this player pool. I'm going to start off with Cleveland, Baltimore. This is a big game for me today. I am a big fan, as you know, if you've been watching the show, of these veteran quarterbacks that come into these situations against bad defenses. And those defenses have very little recent tape on these quarterbacks to set their game plan to. And this situation, we got Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is a gunslinger, and we haven't seen him in full force in years. He spent last few years with the New Orleans Saints, and they refused to ever use him. The one time they did use him, he kind of rebelled against the team and gave in a game where they were supposed to be kneeling it out. He gave Jamal Williams the ball, and he ended up scoring a touchdown at the end of the game, and everybody got upset about it. That was one of the last moments that we saw as Arthur Smith as a head coach, when he was yelling at the coach of the Saints, and the Saints coach was trying to explain to him, I had nothing to do with that. So we get Jameis Winston in full force to this week against Baltimore, who has a terrible pass defense. So they got a great run defense, a terrible pass defense. We got Nick Chubb back in this week. I mean, that only helps Jameis Winston if it draws some of the tension off the pass game towards Nick Chubb. Even though Nick Chubb is coming off a devastating knee injury, we don't have any Jerome Ford in this game, so that helps out the pass game even more. So we got all signs pointing towards the pass game in this one. Just to give you an idea of the type of matchup, let's see. Baltimore is giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So if we take Jameis Winston's gunslinging mentality against a high-powered offense with a bad defense, and they are already giving up 21.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, then we could see Jameis Winston, I think he has a pretty good chance of hitting that 21 point mark. And all his weapons and him are very cheap. So he's at 5,100, and we got him in this great matchup. On the other side, Lamar Jackson, not as good a matchup against Cleveland. Cleveland's only giving up 15 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Cleveland's defense is actually, well, I shouldn't say actually, but, obviously pretty good. And they have only given up 15 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, 19 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. If they focus on Derrick Henry and get Derrick Henry out of this game and force Lamar to pass more, that's even better for our environment. They're giving up 19.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts and 12.4 DraftKings points a game to the slot. Only 6.6 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So Cleveland is not as good of a matchup as Baltimore is. Let me share this tab. I'm going to share over these injuries. We'll take a look at the injuries here. On the Ravens side, we have TJ Tampa, a cornerback, is out. Nate Wiggins is also out. And then we got Marlon Humphrey doubtful. I mean, all these injuries only help the Jameis Winston case even more. On the Browns side, we got Jerome Ford out. We got offensive tackle Jedrick Wills is out. Linebacker Jordan Hicks is out. And safety Ronnie Hickman is out. So, some injuries on that defense for the Browns side too. So Jackson should be able to put up a decent amount of points in this one, but Jameis Winston, I think, is the guy that we want to hone in on. Nick Chubb, as I mentioned, is back. Didn't do too much last week, but he's coming off that devastating injury. Ended up with 10 DraftKings points last week, which isn't bad. Justice Hill, 5,400. I think this is going to be more of a Baltimore plays with a lead, and we got Jameis Winston in catch-up mode, or at least trying to be aggressive in this game. No other running backs I'd be interested in this game. Derrick Henry, you could play him if you want. He's at 8,100. I don't like him necessarily against his defense, but it's Derrick Henry, and look at his points. He scored, like, in the last 5 games. He's hit 28 plus DraftKings points in 4 of the last 5. You don't really need me to go into Derrick Henry, but it is a tougher run defense that he's facing this week. As I mentioned, the Browns are only giving up 19 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, and there are other pay up spots that we could go to. Zay Flowers was questionable. I think I saw a notice this morning that he is expected to play. Yeah, notification. Schefter thinks he's going to play, and Zay Flowers in a decent matchup, actually. 6,800 though, he's getting too pricey. Jerry Jeudy, 4,800, and he is who Watson went to the most. Winston went to the most when he came in the game last week. He ended up getting, I think, out of the 11 throws that Winston made last week, 5 of those targets went to Jerry Jeudy, or at least 4 of them. He got a significant portion of those targets, so he seemed to like Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy is not one of my favorite plays on the week. I prefer to go towards Cedric Tillman. Tillman is a guy that he's been hyped before he got drafted, or when he got drafted. There was some hype around him heading into the season. He was a best ball target. Yeah, he has not delivered on anything, but he's had competition in the likes of Amari Cooper and guys like that. But Cooper is now off the team, and they have no real weapons in the receiving game anymore except for Njoku. So that makes Cedric Tillman very interesting. He got 12 targets last week in the first game without Amari Cooper. He's a guy that we want to have exposure to this week in our player pools if we're going to have exposure to Jameis Winston, and he's only 3,300, so he gets us a decent salary relief. He will be owned this week. He's not flying under the radar, but if you do Browns stacks this week, you could get a little bit different if you're doing a Browns double stack in particular. Other than that, I think the only other guy receiver worth mentioning is Rashad Bateman. Bateman has that similar matchup that Zay Flowers has. He had 4 targets last week, 25 DraftKings points. He scored a 59-yard touchdown, and he's only 4,300. So Rashad Bateman is definitely interesting this week as well. Another salary relief guy. If you need a run back, I think you can run Jameis Winston stacks without running it back, though. with all these Baltimore weapons being expensive. You just got to assume that Jameis Winston is going to be playing from behind. It's going to be a game where maybe Lamar Jackson is the one scoring all the points on Baltimore's side, and that doesn't help us if we're trying to stack the Jameis side. As far as tight ends, Njoku has a decent matchup. Baltimore is giving up 14 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. They're giving up 15.5 to the slot. They're giving up 28.5 to wideouts. And as I mentioned, Marlon Humphrey is doubtful. And we got those injuries on the Wiggins also out, I believe. So we got those injuries on the Baltimore side to their secondary, which is going to just help this entire passing game. So Njoku, I like him this week. He's 5,100. He's getting up there in price. He was the other guy that Jameis was targeting and ended up getting 23.6 DraftKings points last week. So Njoku, finally this team gets out from underneath Deshaun Watson. They got a veteran quarterback coming in who has very little tape on for the past few years. And he is against a defense that he can take advantage of, and he is a gunslinger. So all sorts of pluses in that matchup. The tight ends on the Baltimore side, Likely and Andrews, in a timeshare. On top of that, they're playing against a difficult defense, so I tend to stay away from that. Tennessee versus Detroit is a game where Jameson Williams is out this week. So that's going to make things interesting for the passing game. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let's see. First of all, the Tennessee Titans are giving up only 12.9. This really isn't a good matchup for Detroit. As far as the quarterback position, Tennessee's giving up 15.5 DraftKings points a game. They're only giving up 20.3 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Let's check on David Montgomery's status. Montgomery doesn't have an injury designation. So they're going to be, the usual two-headed monster in the backfield. Maybe Montgomery gets a little bit more run because I expect Detroit to, win this game handily. I just don't, know who's going to be getting the points in it. Tennessee's defense is not a bad defense. 12.9 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, and 5.4 DraftKings points a game to the tight end. So there's really no matchup that stands out. I think Amon-Ra is drawing the ownership in this one. Let me double check that. Yeah, no, actually, he's not getting that much. He's getting 8.4% ownership. Let me check the team in general, just see if there's an idea of where people are heading in this game. So Jahmyr Gibbs has an 11% ownership, and he's the highest on the slate. So there isn't a lot of ownership on this game, but I do expect Detroit to win it by a decent margin. They're playing in Detroit against like a terrible Tennessee team, but their defense isn't bad. So it might be a field goal game or like a defense, Detroit's defense. I'd have a decent picking up that Detroit defense. I just don't like anyone on Tennessee's side. The spot to attack Detroit has been the slot, and they just got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre is now on the Chiefs. So Nick Westbrook-Akine. If I was going to guess anybody, I would say Westbrook-Akine at 3K is another value guy that we can keep in our player pools this week. No Hopkins. Last week, he ended up getting 4 targets, his most on the season. And the Titans shelved Hopkins for a decent amount of the game last week. Let's see what kind of run Hopkins got last week. He only ended up getting 1 target last week. So, yeah, they really had him on the shelf last week against Buffalo. So, Akine is a guy to keep in our player pools. player pools this week because I think that at 3K against that slot defense of Detroit, that's a defense position I've been targeting all season. He would be the most interesting to me in this game. Indy at Houston and David Montgomery in that game too, just because of the opportunity that Detroit's going to have to play from ahead. Indy at Houston. This one we're looking at a total of 46.5 points. The last game, Detroit, Tennessee, was 44.5 point total. And we're looking at Detroit as 10.5 point favorites in that one. Cleveland, Baltimore, we're looking at a 44.5 point total with Baltimore's 9.5 point favorites for our guy, Jameis Winston. Now, Houston, Indy, there's a spread of 5.5 points with Houston being the favorites. We got Richardson back this week. We had him back last week, too. He didn't do too much, 9 points. Dude hasn't done much at all this year, which is kind of predictable because he's either getting hurt or he's not an accurate thrower. And teams are just more in the loop on him now. So Richardson is just having a terrible season. And it doesn't look like it's getting any easier for him on the schedule. And it's going to be a while before we have an opportunity to really play him in a good matchup. And his salary, let's just hope his salary keeps going down so we get that matchup when he's like 5,400. But Richardson it's going to be a little while before we're able to play Richardson. This is not the week for me against the Houston defense. That's really only giving up. Well, they're giving up 18.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So that's actually a really good matchup. So let's see the injuries on Houston's side. All right. Texans, we're looking at linebacker. Al-Shahir is out, and Jimmy Ward, the safety, is out. So that makes things even more interesting for Richardson after I just buried him. Colts, defensive end, Avery is out. Carlisle is out as the linebacker. DeForest Buckner might be back. That's not great for Mixon, and Cameron McGrone is questionable, another linebacker. So, yeah, so I guess Richardson is a little bit in play at 5,800 here. How did he do against Houston week one? Week one against Houston, he actually did pretty good at 27 DraftKings points. So I just talked myself into keeping Richardson in the player pool this week. As far as stacking partners, the Houston Texans have been weakest against wideouts. They've been allowing 20.7 DraftKings points a game to the wideout position, but Pittman has not done anything. The guy that has had a connection with Richardson has been Alec Pierce. In that week where Richardson went off against Houston, Pierce had 24.5 DraftKings points. He's had a few, like moments where he had over 16 DraftKings points at least, but he's 5K. So we would need to get 20 plus points for him to be worth it. And he's done it on 2 occasions this year already. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to pair Richardson with anybody, Alec Pierce is the one that has the most success with him. Downs is too expensive. Adonai Mitchell might be interesting as well, but he really has not been targeted too much by Richardson, but he did get 5 targets in week one against Houston, and he had 3 targets against Miami last week with Richardson. So if you were going to take a flyer on a stacking partner with Richardson, let's see what Adonai's snap count was last week before 23% snap. So he's barely getting on the field. He got outplayed last week by Ashton Doolin, who was another one of those splash play guys on Indy. but Alec Pierce had a 79% snap share, and he's been pretty consistent with that snap share throughout the season. He's the guy that's shown the most connection with Richardson. Pittman has not shown a connection with him. Where's Pittman at? Pittman's at 6K. I would just put Pierce in with Richardson if I was going to play a guy with Richardson. Otherwise, I'd probably just run him naked. You can run him with Mixon as the run back. Mixon destroyed them the last game that they played, 29.8 DraftKings points. Every game Mixon has started, he's hit over, just about 30 DraftKings points. So Mixon is just really gelling with this new team of his. And Indy is a team that we've targeted frequently for the running back position. They've been a little bit better against them. 23 DraftKings points a game is what they're allowing to the running back position, but in general, just a terrible team defense. But Buckner is potentially back this week, which should help them out with their run defense. Tight end has been good against Indy. Indy's given up 15 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So you could put Schultz in that run back as well if you wanted to. I like Mixon. I don't want to have a ton of exposure to this game, but like I mentioned, the spread is 5.5 points. They're playing, I believe, in Houston. Yeah, in Houston. So they're in a dome. Like if you want to run Richardson, I'd say run him back with one of those guys I mentioned. As far as Stroud, he's 6,900. He has a good matchup too, but like with Stroud, he hasn't been great this year. I would tend to go Mixon over Stroud. He's just too expensive at 6,900 for what he's done this season. I think there's better places to go with that quarterback budget. But, also Diggs playing outside a lot. 18 DraftKings points a game is what Indy's giving up to the outside wide receivers. They're giving up 12.6 to inside. Let me check and see if there's any type of a matchup advantage here. All right, so according to Rich Rebar, when Houston has faced cover 3 looks without Collins this season, Diggs is getting the most targets. So Diggs would be the guy if you wanted to play one of these receivers, but he's at 7,500. So if you think it's worth it, if you want to start that Richardson at quarterback and run him back with somebody besides Mixon or Schultz, then Diggs makes sense with that target share. But that's pretty much the exposure I would have to this game, other than Texans defense, which is at 3,100, so they're pretty cheap. So I don't mind that defense there. All right, let's go to Green Bay versus Jacksonville. Looking at another game that is pretty interesting, that should go relatively under-owned. Looking at a 4.5 point spread with a 48.5 point total. That's one of the higher totals on the slate. In fact, from what I see, it's the highest total on the slate, unless I'm missing something. Let me double check that, because that Cincy Eagles game should be the highest total on the the Green Bay Jacksonville games actually gone up. It's 49.5 points now with a 3.5 point spread. So the spread is coming in. Money must be coming in on Jacksonville. Either that or they're trying to get money to come in on Green Bay. Forget what I just said. Yeah, the money must be coming in on Jacksonville for them to be getting closer in that spread. And they're playing in Jacksonville. As far as the matchup, Jacksonville's given up 23.7 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, so that's a really good spot for Jordan Love. They're giving up 26.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back, so it's a good spot for Josh Jacobs as well. Jacksonville just getting back from the UK too. I'm surprised that the spread is coming in and the total's going up in favor of Jacksonville. Like they just spent 2 weeks in the UK. They won their last game there, but, Jacksonville's been a mixed, like a terrible, defense this year, but, like, just a bad team in general. Lawrence, has been doing better these last few weeks, 25 DraftKings points, 18, and then, 15 against New England, but they were blowing them out. So, Trevor Lawrence at 5,600, that's not really bad. If we got the total going up, money coming on the Jacksonville side. Trevor Lawrence might not be a bad play at 5,600 this week. Jordan Love is a good play. He's at 7,100 though. He's been a stud though this year. Look at DraftKings points: 18.8, 26, 34. He missed a couple games there with an injury early in the season after he suffered I think it was like a knee injury against the Eagles in week 1. But both those guys are interesting. As far as the running backs, ETN is looking doubtful to play. He's listed as questionable, considered a long shot to play, according to Rappaport. So ETN might be out this week. The Green Bay defense is giving up 22.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. They're only giving up 14.2 points a game to the quarterback position, which is, makes this. Let me see what the injuries are. All right, Green Bay versus Jacksonville. Let's switch over to this tab. Corey Ballantyne is doubtful. Josh Myers, Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker. All those guys are questionable as far as the Jaguars. ETN looking like he's a long shot. Cam Robinson, the O-line is questionable. Bunch of guys questionable on the Jacksonville side. So yeah, nothing. I mean, that's just interesting in general. That makes Jacksonville interesting, despite the matchup. Bigsby would be interesting this week, but also Dearness Johnson. If we're expecting Jacksonville to be playing from behind, it seems like it's going to be a pretty tight game. Like Bigsby will be interesting at 6,300, but I think more interesting is going to be Dearness at 40. Well, he's at 4,800, so he's expensive. So actually, no, 4K is the minimum for running backs these days. So 4,800 is really not that bad for a running back. Dearness Johnson could be an interesting play if we're expecting Jacksonville to be playing from significantly behind. But if you think that they're going to keep the game close, that makes Bigsby interesting. With ETN potentially being out, you got to check and keep up on that status, make sure he's out. Jacobs is also interesting at 6,600, but he just hasn't been delivering this year. He's had one game over 20 DraftKings points at 6,600. We need to get close to 30 points for him to pay off. If we're looking at wide receivers, I think the guy with the best matchup for Green Bay is going to be Dubs. Dubs has had a couple good weeks recently. He's at 5,700, so he's affordable. Yeah, Dubs would be the guy if we're looking at the. Let's see. Let me go to the man versus zone stats to look at here. All right, so Jacksonville is running man coverage at the 4th highest rate. That's something we've talked about multiple times on the show. And the guy that benefit the most from that versus man coverage, Romeo Doubs has a 19% target share against man coverage. Other guys that benefit, Jaden Reed only has a 15% target share versus man coverage. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing your lean. A lot of people like to uh, automatically put Jaden Reed in that spot. But keep in mind, Green Bay's only giving up 9.8 DraftKings points a game to the slot. They're giving up 19.7 to wideouts. So Dubs, sorry, that was the wrong information. We're looking at Green Bay's slot receiver. Jacksonville's only giving up 13.5 DraftKings points a game to the slot. They are giving up 26.1 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So wideouts are going to have the advantage in this. If I'm stacking Love in this game, Dubs is going to be one of the guys. And Watson and Wicks have been splitting touches, but they are the other two guys, or splitting reps. They're the other two guys that benefit from man coverage. Watson has a 22% target share, and Wicks has a 38% target share against man coverage. Watson has run 27 routes against man. Wicks has run 29 routes against man, and Dubs has run 42 against man. So I would put in Jordan Love with two of those three guys. As far as the tight end, maybe even like Tucker Kraft, maybe one of those guys and Tucker Kraft too. Like two out of those four guys I'd stack with Love. I'd stack Kraft, I'd stack Dubs, Watson, or Wicks too. So two out of those four guys are good starts against this defense. See, Kraft is mainly touchdown dependent. He only gets about 4 targets a game, but he's been a touchdown machine. But if you think this game's going to be close and Jacksonville's going to put up a fight, I like Jordan Love with two of those receivers, and we don't really need to worry too much about Reed. Reed's always going to be a scary fade because he's been the favorite target, but he does have those propensities for down weeks, and he's in a unfavorable matchup against a man coverage situation. Let me check Philly. He had 36 DraftKings points against Philly. What does Philly run? Yeah, Philly's middling in man coverage. They're 15th overall against running man coverage, or 15th overall as far as their defense running man coverage. So interesting situation there. Ingram is a guy I'm interested in at 5K. He's been getting a ton of targets, and with Green Bay giving up 12.8 DraftKings points a game to tight ends, that makes Ingram interesting. Wideouts are also interesting in this matchup. I think Brian Thomas has the best matchup from a DVOA perspective on the right, like where he's aligned. So yeah, Christian Kirk, not a great matchup for him. 9.8 DraftKings points a game. So it'd really be Brian Thomas, I think, would be the guy to if you were targeting a receiver. And then on the tight end side, Evan Ingram would be a good guy. If I was running it back with somebody, it'd probably be Evan Ingram. If I was running it back with a Jordan Love double stack, it'd be Evan Ingram, I think. So Josh Jacobs, like I said, like if you wanted to go in a different direction, you could just play Josh Jacobs and maybe run him back with Evan Ingram. So interesting game there, especially with that line movement. Arizona versus Miami. Looking at a total on this one of 46.5 points. We got Miami as 3.5-point favorites. Tua is back. We get Tua back this week. And we've got an underpriced Tyreek Hill, who is going to be the highest owned guy on the slate. He's at 7K, rightfully so, as far as highest owned guy on the slate because he's cheap. And he has, against Arizona, a decent matchup. They're giving up 19.9 DraftKings points a game to wideouts and 15.8 from the slot. And Tyreek is running 35% of his routes from the slot. That is one of the top matchups on the slate versus the slot. On top of that, yeah, like I said, they get Tua back. A decent total, 46.5 points. Arizona really has not been putting up points at all, but they have good matchups for the wideouts. 24 DraftKings points a game is what Miami's giving up to wideouts. They're giving up 20.2 to the slot. That would theoretically make Dortch and Harrison interesting, but Kyler Murray is just not good. So let's take a look at Harrison here. Yeah, he just really has not done anything. Let me double check that those numbers because I see I want to make sure that those are the points that Arizona's been giving out to wideouts, or Miami's been giving out to wideouts. Miami's been giving out 9.1 to slot. Yeah, so those numbers are wrong. Forget what I said about that. I don't know how those numbers got wrong. Now, Arizona has a terrible matchup against Miami. So it's basically Miami or bust in this one. Let me just double check something here. .9, 15 point. Yeah, okay. So yeah, Arizona, terrible matchup for Arizona. I would fade those wide receivers. Tyreek, you can run. Basically, the entire Miami offense is functioning again now that they got Tua back in there, and they're all cheap. So let's go through all these guys. Tyreek is obviously the best value at 7K. Waddle is a good value at 5,400. Look at what he's done without Tua. They basically had Tua for week 1. He had 19 DraftKings points. They haven't had him for basically the rest of the season, and he's been, just mediocre at best. If we're looking down a little further, we don't need to go anywhere else there. A-Chain, 6,200. Another guy. Look at what he did with Tua. 23 DraftKings points. Without Tua, he hasn't done anything. But we get him back with Tua this week. Mostert is back though, so he's going to be splitting those carries. So just keep that in mind if you want to start A-Chain. A-Chain price wise is pretty good too at 6,200. Mostert not so great at 5,900. As far as Arizona's side, Connor's been the only one interesting on the Arizona side, but I just don't. Miami might blow these guys out. Let me check something with these running backs on Arizona's side real quick. Just want to confirm what Miami's been doing against them. Yeah, Miami's actually been giving up 26 DraftKings points. So I got my Arizona numbers wrong here. So yeah, 26 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So that does make Connor interesting this week. So Connor is a good play this week against Miami if you want somebody to skinny stack your Tyreek lineups with. So interesting matchup for Connor there. As far as the tight end position, let me get an idea of tight end position versus Miami. All right, Miami versus the tight end has been given up. They've only been giving up 6.4 DraftKings points to the tight end position. So, tight end is you don't have to worry about Trey McBride so much in this matchup. Let's see. As far as Miami's side, with Arizona's given up 11.3 to the tight end position, and Jonnu Smith is a guy who's been getting targets recently. He's at 3,600. If you wanted to do a Tua stack with a couple guys, it might be Tyreek, and maybe you put Jonnu in that stack as well. Jonnu, last few weeks, he's got 8 targets and 7 targets. That was with that scrubby quarterback, though. Last time he was with Tua, he only got 2 targets. But, now that he's more acclimated in this offense, maybe Jonnu Smith starts getting targeted by Tua. So that would make Jonnu interesting. With the prices on these Miami guys, the game stack does make sense. Like double stacking Tua with a couple of these pass catching weapons. Tua himself is at 60. Well, he's probably the most overvalued of these guys, but Tua at 6,100 is still not bad. If you wanted to stack him with Tyreek and Waddle, I mean, that's as cheap as you're going to get this stack all season. You can maybe mix and match in Jonnu Smith in this too. The run back would be Connor. But if we're expecting them to be playing with a significant enough lead, there's really it's tough to figure out which wide receiver to stack with them, just because Miami's been good against wideouts. But you could always try to put Harrison in there and hope that talent over matchup. But Harrison, we're still trying to figure out how much talent he has in the NFL, because he hasn't done anything really since week 4. But he's an option, and he's not that expensive. He's expensive for what he's done, but not expensive for like the hype around him. All right, Jets versus New England. This is a game that probably could go as a fade here, except for maybe Breece Hall. Looking at a 41.5 point total. Jets are 7-point favorites in this one. The way that the Jets have been playing recently, I don't know why they're favored by a touchdown, other than now they have Adams and obviously Wilson. Both those guys are expensive, though, 7,100 and 67. If you look at Breece Hall, though, at 7,300, he's pretty decent value, and we've seen him come alive. Talked about this a couple weeks ago when they fired the head coach and they brought in the offensive coordinator. The first thing that the new offensive coordinator said was that he's going to be getting Breece Hall heavily involved. He's going to be the focus of the offense, and he has been true to his word. We've seen Breece Hall put up 2 weeks in a row of 25 plus DraftKings points. So, he's been big in the receiving game, 9 targets and 6 targets. He's been big in the running game, or decent in the running game, 18 attempts and 12 attempts. We haven't seen Braylon Allen playing very much. So they've definitely shifted the focus over to Breece instead of giving touches to the rookie. So Breece Hall is interesting, especially at this price, and that's probably about the only interesting thing in this game, except for Hunter Henry. The Jets have only been giving up 8.8 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, but Hunter Henry has come alive these last couple weeks. with Drake May, 5 targets and 9 targets. He's 3,800 though, but Hunter Henry is kind of interesting this week. Let me check something here with the Jets numbers here. Yeah, Jets have only been giving up 8.8 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, so really not interested too much in Hunter Henry. But I think the interest here would be, Brees Hall, or if you think that, I mean, the matchup's pretty good for the wideouts with New England giving up 20 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. I think Adams has been running a lot in the slot, which is a worse matchup against New England. So maybe Garrett Wilson would be the lean here if I was putting a wideout. 7,100 for Adams. You got 6,700 for Wilson. So he has the cheaper price tag and he has the at least the better matchup. So maybe Wilson is the guy to lean towards in this game. All right, so let's move on to the next game. Atlanta versus Tampa Bay. This is a game that's I'm seeing some popularity on. I get it more with the cheap wide receivers, but I don't think that the offensive environment is going to be strong in this one. We're talking about a team that just lost all its weapons. In Tampa Bay, they lost Evans, they lost Godwin. Let's check out the ownership. I'm looking at ownership on Cade Otton at about 30%, which makes sense. Other than that, like Jalen McMillan is also highly owned. Question is going to be which of these receivers do we want to focus on? Jalen McMillan was a slot specialist in college, but Sterling Shepard has been a slot specialist his entire NFL career. So I would imagine that Sterling Shepard is going to be getting the slot reps in this one. He played ball with Baker Mayfield in college. So Baker Mayfield's going to have the most familiarity with Sterling Shepard, who's at 3,800. Jalen McMillan is the guy that was getting all the hype in the preseason, and then he got hurt. And he really started off the season slow, but last week he had 8 targets. He only had 3 receptions, though, against Baltimore, that rough, weak pass defense. So not too reliable there last week. Trey Palmer, he's a guy that's been playing with Baker now for 2 years. And last week, he only got 3 targets, last week. But Trey Palmer, Baker's going to have the most familiarity with Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard on those receivers. And the ownership is pointing towards Jalen McMillan. So I think you can get a nice pivot with one of those other guys. McMillan's the mystery box type of guy where he has a lot of upside, but we don't know if he's going to be any good. 8 targets, 3 receptions last week for 15 yards. That's not good, but he's been the alpha in practice all week. And if he starts showing upside like he did in the preseason, in training camp, then McMillan could do something. Otton is going to be the safest play. Otton, as far as his matchup, we're looking at a 45.5 point total. Atlanta are only 2.5 point favorites, which is surprising to me. I would figure that they would be heavier favorites. They're playing in Tampa Bay, though. The slot is where Atlanta's most susceptible. They've been giving up 15.4 DraftKings points a game to the slot position. So Sterling Shepard or Jalen McMillan, depending on which direction they end up going in the slot there, which player gets that work in the slot, that's where it's going to be, helping us to make that decision this week. because just let me confirm this. Atlanta has been giving up. Yeah, they've been giving up 15.4 to the slot and 19.3 to wideouts. So that is a good matchup in the slot, and that's a middling matchup to wideouts. I would probably roll with Shepard though. Yeah, because given everything equal and the ownership that we're seeing on McMillan, that is going to make Sterling Shepard at the same price, basically, with that same position in the slot. That's going to make him the obvious game theory pivot. So Sterling Shepard, interesting there. Otten, the safe play. He's going to have 30% ownership though. But, we saw it last week. He ended up getting 10 targets with both those guys getting hurt in the game. Evans got hurt right at the beginning. Godwin got hurt midway through. Matchup isn't the best matchup, 11 DraftKings points a game, but it's a middling matchup. So, keep that in mind. Tampa's defense has been pretty terrible this year. Tampa Bay is giving up 14.2 DraftKings points a game to the slot and 22 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. Those are both, among the best matchups that you can get against a team. They've also been giving up 12.6. So it's a pick your poison on the Atlanta side. Everybody on Atlanta has a good matchup. 22 DraftKings points a game to quarterbacks and 25 DraftKings points a game to running backs. It's a situation where even Algier could be in play if Atlanta, blows these guys out. Algier is only 5,100, and we've seen him getting run this season. He got 22 DraftKings points when they blew out Carolina a couple weeks ago. He should get a decent amount of run in this game, though, because I don't anticipate Tampa Bay being too great in this game, or potentially struggling to put up points. Meanwhile, Atlanta at basically full health, could easily pull away in this one. Bijan Robinson is another guy that's going to be a good matchup this week. Get an idea of his ownership. I don't think I've heard a lot mentioned about Bijan this week. He's got about 13% ownership, so not too bad for Bijan. He's still at a decent price too. The only problem with Bijan, obviously, is we're worried about the work that Algier gets. But Tampa is susceptible to running backs this year. Bijan's been getting ramped up these last couple weeks, though. 25 plus DraftKings points. He'd need about that to be worth his salary. So I do think that Bijan is in our player pool this week, and I would put Algier in there too. These running backs on Tampa's side are going to be tough to figure out. Irving is questionable, though. He's expected to suit up, but if he's going to be the one that is coming in banged up, Rachaad White became a big part of the passing game once Godwin and Evans were out. We saw it. He ended up getting 6 targets. He is the reliable pass catcher on this offense as far as running backs go. It's been the story on him like his entire career, is that he's not very good in the run game, but he makes up for it in his passing work. And that was the case last week. I think that Rachaad White is where it would lean if I was looking for a running back to play in this game. He's at 5,700. He's cheaper than Irving. How many? What's Irving's targets been like? Yeah, Irving has not gotten to that target rate that White got. So if they're playing from behind, like I would anticipate against this Atlanta team, and the lack of weapons on the side of Tampa Bay, then Rachaad White makes an interesting play here at 5,700. As far as the Atlanta side, Drake London, I mean, he's been pretty decent, like with his DraftKings points, but at 7,200, he's only had one output of, like more than 20 DraftKings points, and that was when he scored 36 against Tampa Bay last time they played, but Tampa Bay had all their weapons healthy in that game. I think this is more of a Bijan game. London should be popular this week, but I don't see a need to go there. I would go more towards the Bijan side, honestly. Mooney is also interesting. Mooney, last time he played Tampa, he ended up with 34 DraftKings points. So he had a big game too. He's a cheaper guy at 5,800, but I don't know that they're going to need to pass very much in this game. So Mooney, I'd probably stay away from because he's creeping up there in price. We're not getting him at that 4K level anymore. Other than that, yeah, just I think I'd lean Shepard over McMillan just because of the ownership perspective, but you can certainly play McMillan. Palmer is interesting too. All those guys are cheap. They're going to be good salary savers this week, but they will have the ownership. And there are other spots where we can get cheap. I've called out a couple of them already. I can't even remember who I mentioned. But let's move on to this Cincy versus Philly game. This is my favorite game on the slate. It's also an expensive game. This is the game where I'm going to be taking as many pieces as I can once I've gotten my cheaper weapons in there or my cheaper pieces in there. Looking at a 47.5 point total with a 1.5 point spread in favor of Cincy. A little bit surprising to me. Let me check it now that we got word on Higgins. Higgins is going to be likely a game time decision. Looking at a 2.5 point spread now in favor of Cincy. So they've gotten to even better favorites. Let's look at the injuries. All right, the Eagles, looking at Goddard is out, Mekhi Becton, their offensive line is out, and Byron Young, defensive tackle, is out. On the Bengals side, we got T. Higgins is going to be questionable. I believe he's a game-time decision. He hurt himself in practice. He hurt his quad. That's never good. That has jacked up the ownership for Josephus. We saw like week 1 and 2 where Higgins was missing. Josephus got 6 and 4 targets. So didn't do anything really. We have more of a track record last season of Higgins out and Josephus like having decent games, but really we want to target slot receivers against Philly. I've said it all year. Josephus makes sense there, because he's getting 54% of his routes in the slot, but Jamar Chase is getting 33% of his routes in the slot. And we got a high total game here. A game that should shoot out, as far as I'm concerned. And Jamar Chase is looking at about 17% ownership. He's at 8,500. So obviously he's expensive. But we've seen him capable of putting up 30 plus DraftKings points. He would basically need to do that to justify his salary. AJ Brown, also interesting. The defense on the Cincy side has been pretty bad. Pretty bad this season. And check something real quick on this. Points given up. So the Philly side, Philly's been giving up 16.3 to slot receivers and 17 points a game to wideouts. So the wideout matchup is not good against Philly. Actually, Philly's defense has been doing decent lately. That's let's see who they've played. Philly's defense has been okay. So they played the Giants. They've played Cleveland. When they played Tampa Bay, They lost to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay had 33 points against them. They played New Orleans. They were the first team to play New Orleans after they lost. New Orleans lost McCoy and basically like killed that offense. As far as Atlanta, they gave up 20. So they really have not faced. It's a little bit deceptive what Philly's defense has done recently. So maybe that's scaring people off of this matchup. But I do think that it's a good matchup for good game environment for this game to go off. As far as running backs, let's see what Barkley's ownership is. Barkley's looking he's at 4.2%, but he's expensive. But 4.2% for Barkley in a game that should go off, like that is next to nothing. He's been up and down since he's giving up 21.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. I like Barkley in this game. I also like Chase Brown. Chase Brown's been pretty explosive, and Philly's been susceptible to explosive running back plays. Chase Brown's only 5,800, and he's not going to get a ton of ownership. And he's the guy, since he's playing from behind or they're playing in a competitive, I would anticipate Chase Brown to be getting used a lot in the passing game in this one. He's 3 targets as his max, but I think I'd lean Chase Brown over Zach Moss in this one for sure, especially at 5,800. I like Barkley in this at 8,300. I like Jamar Chase in this game. Brown and Smith are both in play. Brown is where I would lean as far as the wideout matchup, because since he's given up 20.8 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, but they're giving up 10.3 to slot receivers. They've been better against the slot. But if we're looking at man versus zone coverage, I've talked about this before, but if we're looking at man versus zone coverage, let's see. We're looking at more of a zone defense that they're up against this week, and that tends to favor Devontae Smith historically, because Smith has 20% against zone this year versus 23% for A.J. Brown. But historically, Devontae Smith has been the pivot versus zone coverage. But Brown has the better matchup. He's at 8,200. I don't hate Smith at 6,600. I think you can pivot to Smith in this one. As far as ownership goes, looking at, let's see, get an idea what Brown's ownership is here. AJ Brown is coming in at only set. Like all these guys are coming in at under-owned. This is the game that we want to get as many pieces as we can. 0.9% for Devontae Smith in this matchup with 2 high-powered offenses, questionable defenses facing off against each other. This game is the game to focus on with our cheap pieces, loading up the expensive pieces of this game. Saints versus Chargers. Oh, I didn't even mention the quarterbacks either. I like the quarterbacks both in this game, but they're both expensive. We're looking at $7K for Burrow, $7,500 for Hurts. Both guys are hard to get in. As far as tight ends, Calcaterra, don't fall into that trap. It's a good matchup. I will say that 14.8. So if you do need a cheap tight end, Calcaterra is not bad, but he's 3,200. I just think that Philly's going to go more towards Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley in the passing game for short intermediate routes than they would at tight end. That hasn't been playing with the team that much this season. Like Goddard is not a 1-for-1 swap with Calcaterra. It doesn't work that way with Philly. They tend to go with the guys that Hurts is most comfortable with. All right, so let's move on to the next game. Getting close to building these lineups, guys. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes to trigger the short video later on, and make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can sign up for alerts for when those videos come out. Also, by the way, I did an underdog pick'em this week. Going to give you that real quick here. I put out a short video. I'll give it to you on this too. Make sure to sign up for an underdog account using the promo code SEEK. They're going to give you a deposit match up to $1,000, 50% deposit match up to $1,000 if you use the promo code SEEK. I've been doing these pick'ems on underdog. I went higher for Breece Hall than 5 targets. I went higher for Cedric Tillman on 37.5 receiving yards. I went higher for Tyreek Hill on 6 receptions. He's beat that basically 12 out of 15 games last year, and he beat that with Tua in the game that they played earlier this season. Tillman, I had 37.5 receiving yards because Baltimore's given that up to 11 receivers so far this season, and Cedric Tillman seems to be the wide receiver 1 in that offense. Breece Hall, higher than 5 targets. He's beaten that multiple times already. Let's take a look at Breece Hall real quick here. Go back to this Jets game. Breece Hall targets the last couple weeks since he's been more involved in this offense. 5 targets and 6 targets. This week, with the projection of 5 targets, I'm going higher on that. I think that he can do that in this game against New England. Kareem Hunt, I went higher than 17.5 rushing attempts. I think that Kansas City is gonna roll over the Raiders in this one. Raiders have been running their mouths on Kansas City, and I just think that they're just gonna get smoked in this one. And I like Kareem Hunt over 17.5 rushing attempts. He's had over 20 in both his games with Kansas City so far. And Joe Mixon, I had over 79.5 rushing yards. He's had 100 rushing yards in all 3 of his games, including 159 in the last game that they played against Indy. For me, I did this 5-game parlay or this 5 prop parlay ended up getting me to 29.5 times my money. So if you want to use it, I heard people on YouTube saying that they got about 19 on it. I put a profit boost on mine. So use the profit boost. That'll get you up to, closer to that 29.5 mark. If you're a new depositor, you can also add on Dak Prescott 0.5 total yards. So you can make this even higher. You can make this probably about 40 times your money. Add on Dak Prescott 0.5 total yards if you're a new depositor. And make sure to use that promo code SEEK, though. That's going to get you the 50% deposit match, and that's going to get you that bonus pick. So back to the breakdown here. Let's get rid of this Jets game. Going to move on to this New Orleans versus Chargers game. Don't like anyone in this game, really. We need to pick and choose our spots here this week. Chargers versus New Orleans. We're looking at the running back matchup for J.K. Dobbins is good. 26.2 DraftKings points a game is what they're giving up to running backs. And slot receivers, 15.2. So that makes McConkey interesting, and that makes Dobbins interesting. Dobbins, he's been up and down this year, but you've seen him in the good matchups where he can put up points. So good matchup again for Dobbins this week. McConkey, decent matchup in the slot here. Let's see. Yeah, the slot, they're giving up 15.2 DraftKings points a game is what New Orleans has given up. So really good matchup for McConkey. You can use either of these guys Both of them are relatively cheap. 5,100 from McConkey. He's not in that 4K range anymore, but he's still on the brink of it. Dobbins 6,900. That might be too pricey for me to go Dobbins in this one, but he does have a good matchup, so keep that in mind. We'll move to Buffalo, Seattle. I like Walker in this game. Metcalf is going to try to play. He's going to try pregame warmups, but it's looking like he's doubtful. But we've seen this with Metcalf before when he looked like he wasn't going to play and he ended up playing. But Walker's been heavily involved in the passing game. 8 targets, 5 targets in several games this season already. They're facing off against the Bills, who are susceptible to running backs, especially in the pass game. Bills have been giving up 27.4 DraftKings points a game to running backs. On the other side, the Seahawks have been giving up 25.1 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We're looking at a 47.5 point total. Buffalo is 3-point favorites in this one. They're playing at Seattle, which is good for Walker. Cook, be the guy to lean towards if you want to play that Buffalo running back. Problem with Cook is he's had these big outputs, but look at his attempts. He's had 20 attempts once this season. He had 19 in week 1 against Arizona. As far as targets, he really hasn't gotten a ton of targets. So it's hard to play Cook, but he's in a good spot. Wideouts, Metcalf, like I said, is going to try to play against Buffalo. There's really not too many good matchups for wideouts against Buffalo, but Smith and Jigba should see a bump in his work. When he's gotten those increases in targets, he had 16 targets versus New England. He had 26 DraftKings points there. 12 targets against Detroit. He had 13 DraftKings points there. In Jigba, he's in play, but I don't lean towards that too much. 6,100. It's going to make him interesting with Metcalf out, but I like Kenneth Walker. I think more than any other play. He's expensive though at 7,800, but he's proven he's got the upside there. Quarterbacks, Josh Allen, plug and play. If you want to pay up this week, I think I'm going cheaper at quarterback, but if you want to pay up to be contrarian, Allen makes a good play this week. Get an idea of his ownership. Josh Allen is looking at about 2% DraftKings ownership in a game where both sides have offensive weapons. Should be a good game environment. The total, as I said, 47.5 points. Nobody's going to be on this game. So Josh Allen running back with maybe Kenneth Walker, and then get some of those cheap weapons elsewhere. Cooper, he's at 6K. I don't really hate Cooper at 6K. Seattle's giving up 18.2 DraftKings points a game to the wideouts. They're giving up 13.1 to tight end. So I don't hate stacking Kincaid. But Kincaid, his price hasn't really come down too much. He's peaked at 5,800. He's only down about 1,000 from that points. You need about 20 DraftKings points. I think Kincaid could get 20 DraftKings points, but I think with Cooper now on the team, it kind of muddles the situation with the pass catchers. But Kincaid does have a decent matchup. He'll have no ownership. He's at 4,900. Let's move on to the next game. Kansas City versus Las Vegas. I think Kansas City rolls. They're going to be making a statement in this game. Oakland, the Raiders have just been dumb, just in general this entire season. Like the coach mouthing off about like the players, and then Devontae Adams demands a trade. Coach mouths off about owning Patrick Mahomes. Now they face the Chiefs. I don't see this coach lasting very long in Las Vegas. Mahomes is going to destroy them, but it might be through just being clever in this game, and I think they use Kareem Hunt the most. Kareem Hunt's the guy that I like the most in this game. I think that they're going to uh, they're going to beat the Raiders by a significant amount. Expect the defense of Kansas City to show up in this one to get revenge on these idiotic decision making of the Raiders. Chiefs defense has been rolling this year. Uh, I just think that they're just gonna roll over this team. We got DeAndre Hopkins on the Chiefs now. I expect him to get integrated pretty quickly. DeAndre Hopkins is a solid veteran receiver. I would anticipate he would be able to figure this offense out pretty quickly. He's a contested catch guy. He's facing off against a secondary that has been giving up 14.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. But, I expect the Chiefs to attack these guys pretty hard. They begin up 25.7 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, which is why I like Kareem Hunt a lot. You saw me have him in my underdog picks. Slot receivers have also been benefiting against the Raiders. Middling matchup for them, 13 DraftKings points a game. So I don't mind if you wanted to go Worthy. I think Worthy would be interesting. We get a better idea. I just want to confirm something here. Get nervous after that Arizona points were wrong. All right, 14.5 and 13. All right, total 14.5 and 13. Yeah, 13 points a game to the slot. So that's a middling matchup there for Kansas City. Tight end does not have a good matchup against the Raiders. I would go Hunt. I think Hunt's the way to go. I think the players are going to step up for Mahomes in this one, despite the matchup. So really take your pick with who you want to stack Mahomes with. It's impossible to figure out these receivers, but DeAndre Hopkins is going to be interesting. But I would go with Kareem Hunt in this one. And Kelsey, I think, would be the guy, like closest to Mahomes who's going to be like fired up for this game. So maybe Kelsey would be interesting. Let's look at Kelsey here. Has not done much. He's at 6K. He's still expensive despite, being kind of scrubby this year. 10 targets versus New Orleans, 6 versus the Chargers. I would anticipate Kelsey to be fired up for this one. Bowers has the best matchup on this game, apart from Hunt. So if you need a run back, Bowers would be a guy. If you need a guy in your flex that is at a decent salary that could, easily pay off, I think Bowers is a guy that you can put in the flex if you want to go double tight end. Bowers is the same price as a lot of these running backs that are going to be popular this week. Let me get an idea of Bowers' ownership. Bowers is looking at about 12% ownership. So if you want to pivot off of some of these popular running backs that are in that same price range this week, I don't hate Bowers against this Kansas City defense we've been targeting all year. They've been giving up 17 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. They are the worst in the league versus tight ends. And Bowers is the best tight end in the league right now. So Bowers makes a lot of sense as a run back if you want to go there. Chicago versus Washington. We're looking at Jaden Daniels' game time decision. He's trending towards playing. He was very iffy earlier in the week, so that makes this game interesting. He's at 7,300 though, facing off against Caleb Williams. We got like the number 1 versus I believe number 2 picks in the draft. Williams has been playing well lately too, and he gets like a defense that's been playing better recently, but they are still a weak defense. You see what Caleb Williams is? He's 3 out of the 4 past week. He's put up over 20 DraftKings points at 6K. That's a good price on Caleb Williams. Let's look up his ownership. Yeah, he's only getting 6% owned, so he's a good play. I like Caleb Williams this week against this defense, especially with Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels, the questionable tag around him all week has taken people off this game. Caleb Williams, like DJ Moore destroyed these guys last year, had him in the captain in that game. It was a primetime game. He was going up against their weak cornerback who just deleted his social media because he was getting made fun of. But he ended up getting about like 50 DraftKings points against them last year. Not to say that's going to happen this year, but he's got that history there. Keenan Allen also in play. As far as the total in this game, I'll get you all that information here. Where is this game? Looking at a 43.5 point total. Let me check in to see if that's gone up. I don't see this being a 43.5 point game. If 44.5, it's gone up a point, but this is another game that's going to go overlooked. Honestly, I think Jaden Daniels can handle that Chicago defense. It's been a tough defense, but the hype around these guys, like we've seen Jaden Daniels perform against bad defense or good defenses. Against Cleveland, he put up 20 DraftKings points against the Giants. Giants are mediocre. That was his weakest full game. He only put up 13, but he's been putting up 20 plus DraftKings points a game. I would play Williams over Daniels in this one, but I think Daniels being in is going to raise the upside of Williams. I think for running backs, Chicago's given up 22 DraftKings points a game to running backs, middling matchup, and Washington's been giving up 22. That's middling. Chicago's been giving up 21.5. That's also middling. Wide outs against Chicago. Wide outs against Washington, getting 20.5 DraftKings points a game. That puts basically all the wide outs for Chicago in play. Slots against Chicago, 14.8 DraftKings points. That makes Keenan Allen interesting. Tight end is the only one that Washington's been pretty good against, so that helps us narrow out Cole Kmet maybe. If we're looking at these wideouts, Keenan Allen, 5,800, that's pretty affordable. Odunze, 5,100, also affordable. Only 2 targets and 3 targets in the last 2 out of 3 weeks for Odunze. Keenan Allen, since he's been back, 5 targets, 6 targets. He got 11 targets in week 1 as well. And meanwhile, DJ Moore looking at 5 targets, 8 targets, 6 targets. I expect this to be a higher volume passing game for Caleb Williams. And if you take out maybe the tight end targets or reduce those, we've seen his attempts at 29, 29, 23, 52. I would anticipate this being more at that 52 range. But we haven't seen Caleb Williams face a beatable defense with 52 attempts, especially since he's caught fire these last couple weeks against these other weak defenses. I would see Caleb Williams. I think he can put up 30 DraftKings points this week, and I would probably stack him. Maybe even stack him with DeAndre Swift, who's been pretty good in the passing game. 4 targets, 7 targets in 2 of the last 3 weeks. I think you can stack him with Swift. I think you can stack him with, like maybe all his weapons are cheap. Moore's only 6,600. Allen's only 5,800, and Odunze is only 5,100. So you could stack him, like maybe with Allen and one of these other guys, or Allen and Swift, or Allen, one of these guys. Allen Moore and Swift might be a good, like 3-way stack if you want to go in that direction. As far as the run back, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. You're really putting your trust in Daniels to be able to beat this defense, and McLaurin would be the interesting guy there. He's cheap at 6,900, but like I said, he's got that tough matchup. Let's see who see who Chicago's faced, where they have that. Okay, they faced Jacksonville, pretty weak team. They've been playing a little bit better lately. They faced Carolina. They faced the Rams without any weapons. They faced Indy, who's been, beatable all year. They faced Houston, which is the best team, and then they faced Tennessee. So keep in mind who they faced. Now they're facing Jaden Daniels. This is going to be the toughest matchup they've faced all year, apart from Houston. So, yeah, McLaurin's in play. I like Noah Brown as well. He's getting pricey at 3,900. We need to see him do a little more. Only one target last week, but he's capable of pulling 8 targets, especially in a game that should be a good game environment for us. So I like Noah Brown. This is going to be a sneaky game, even though it shouldn't be. Let me get the ownership on this game. Highest owned guy is going to be Andre Swift at 15% ownership. Bears, they got it. I see Bears at 12. I think that's before we get official confirmation that Jaden Daniels is going to be in. I think this might be assuming that Jaden Daniels is out. Let me get an idea of Daniels' ownership. Daniels is looking at about 3% owned. This could be one of those spots where we get a sneaky unowned Jaden Daniels. So Jaden Daniels in play, definitely in play. Anytime you can get these high upside guys in competitive game environments like this for low ownership, like you got a good opportunity there. I think the other one is going to be the Cincy versus Philly game. Those are the two interesting games for me this week. Carolina versus Denver. This is one where a lot of people are going to be on Bo Nix this week. Bo Nix at 5,600 makes a lot of sense. I tend to lean towards Jameis Winston, but Bo Nix, you can definitely play him. I think against this defense, Bo Nix is going to be running a lot, but I think they're going to have a decent enough lead so that they lean more on the running game. I think Williams is the guy. We're talking about like injuries. Deontay Johnson is out. Adam Thielen is out. Quarterback, we got Dalton is doubtful. We're going to have Bryce Young in here. This is going to be a game where the Broncos defense is just going to eat in this one, likely. Broncos defense has been underrated all year. I've been starting them every week, and look at their price tags. It's been under $3K all freaking year, and now we're getting them at 3,700. So they've been jacked up, obviously, for this matchup, but direction to go in this one. We're looking at 9.5-point favorites is Denver. Looking at a 41.5-point total. Carolina's been giving up 18.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. That's where, Bo Nix comes into play. But I do like Javonte Williams. I think better in this one. I also like the potentially the wideouts in this one. I think this is probably the best matchup that Sutton has had. get an idea of Sutton's ownership. We're looking at 3% ownership. Sutton is going to be under-owned in a week where you're seeing a ton of ownership on Knicks. The simple way to get different if you want to start Knicks is stack them with Sutton. Then you're reducing the exposure, the ownership from 14%, which is what Knicks has, to about 3%. And combining those two guys, you'll get it even less. So you probably have about 1% of the field with a Sutton to Knicks stack. Where they've been susceptible, the Panthers have been susceptible to, is to the tight end position, and we've seen Krull come alive recently. 4 targets in the past 2 games. Each of the past 2 games, maybe Krull gets a touchdown in this one. At 2,700, you got your option for a cheap tight end there. If you don't want to go with tight ends in any of these other games. On the Carolina side, I'm not touching the Carolina side in this one, even though looking at a middling matchup for Chuba Hubbard, that's about as good as it gets in as far as the matchups against Denver. Otherwise, I'm not touching anyone on Carolina in this one. But if you want to play the Knicks chalk, then stack them with Sutton to get yourself different. All right, so let's take a look at the whole pool here. I'm going to start off with Winston. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can put out a shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,100 subscribers. I'm 30 off of that. I'm trying to get there before the end of the week, so help me out there. And you want to subscribe to get the alerts for when I put out my short videos and my showdown videos. All right, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to do a couple different lineups here. We'll get Jameis in. One of my favorite quarterbacks on the week. I'm going to stack him with Tillman, who I like. And if we want to go crazy, let's give him Njoku too. All right, that gives us a nice cheap stack there. We're left with about 6K left per guy. Let's get our defense in. Let's see. I'm going to look down as far as I can go. I like Falcons versus Tampa Bay. I think that's about as cheap as I like. So I'm going to put the Falcons in there. Just grab a drink of water here real quick. I'm going to put myself on mute. Going for an hour and a half on this freaking thing. All right, so let's go with our running backs here. I want to put Barkley in there. I want to run him back with maybe Chase. It's going to leave us with 5,600 per guy. I already talked up that Chicago game as well. So let's put Swift in here. And let's run that one back. Yeah, I don't want to have to pick and choose in that game for run backs, but let's put Keenan Allen in here. See where that leaves us. That's going to give us 58 or 5K left. Now, right now we have, I'm not running it back with anyone on Baltimore because it's one of those teams where I don't want to try to figure it out. I like Barkley better than Henry. So I'm going to put Barkley in as my expensive guy. I like the game environment there a lot better. Barkley running it back with Chase. Njoku I got in there, double stacked with Tillman, with Winston. So I got a lot of correlation in this lineup. Swift and Allen. If I wanted to run it back with a flex, I think Noah Brown is basically the only guy that I like in that price range. What I might do here, I might put in Ingram, go double tight end in this one. If I put Ingram in as my flex, I might get rid of Allen here and just stick with Swift in that game. If I take out Allen, let's see what I can get for those Green Bay receivers. I told you that I like Dobbs. He's at 5,700. Boom. Look at that. So we got Winston to Swift. Sorry, Winston to I gave you guys a full lineup. I'm not supposed to do that, so pretend I didn't do that. We got Winston to Tillman and Njoku. I got Barkley running it back with Chase, who I love that game environment. I got exposure to the Chicago-Washington game. I got exposure to this Green Bay-Jacksonville game, especially if I go Dubs and Ingram. And then I got that Falcons D. So let other people try to figure out those cheap weapons on the Tampa Bay side. I'm going to go with Tillman as my cheap guy in this lineup. Everything else is fairly balanced. I got some big weapons in here. You could swap out Dobbs for, like Watson or Wicks if you wanted to. Keep in mind that line movement in that Green Bay game is interesting. So there's a great lineup right there. Got to make sure that I'm entering this one myself. I'm going to put Ingram back in there. You guys saw it. All right. So now let's swap out Winston. Let's put in Williams. See where that gets us. Still gets us ability to use this lineup. But if I wanted to go this way, maybe I take out Dubs and I put back in Allen. And that leaves me with 4,200. So if I want someone on the Washington side, maybe I'm leaning towards Noah Brown at 3,900. Another cheap guy. If I wanted to get McLaurin in there instead, let's see. McLaurin is relatively cheap for his situation. It's going to leave me 2,700 too high. If I wanted to swap out Chase for a guy, I might swap him out for Dubs there, even though I don't have that run back anymore. I think it would make sense if you wanted to go Josephus in this situation too. Leaves us with 2,200 if I wanted to swap out Njoku for Ingram. Let's put Ingram in there. We don't need Njoku double stacked if we don't have if we got Tillman in there already. Let me take Tillman out. Let me put Allen in there. That's going to leave us with, that leaves us with 9,500. How does that leave us with 9,500? All right, we got Caleb Williams stacked with Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift. Running it back with Evan Ingram. Running it back with I don't have McLaurin in there yet. Let's put McLaurin in. Really, I mean, this puts us in a situation. I got 6,200 left. I don't even need to go. Oh, you know what? I like Hunt a lot. Let's put McLaurin in there. Not in the flex. And let's look at our flex options here. So this one I got Williams double stacked with Allen and Swift. Got it running back with McLaurin. I got Barkley as my sole piece in that Cincy game. Prefer to put a stack in there, but it just doesn't work out with the way that I'm going. I got Ingram as my tight end. I might even be able to bump up to Bowers, but let's see where Hunt is. I'm 100 short of Hunt, so I think I would go Hunt there and just drop down on my defense. Maybe the Patriots. I don't think they're a good play, but maybe the Patriots are the best play out of these options. Yeah, Patriots are probably the way I would go in that situation. If I wanted to instead go Bowers maybe as my tight end, but I do like Ingram a good bit. If I wanted to go Bowers and put in that, let's go back to that Falcons defense and flex. That's going to leave us with 5,100, which puts us in the range of McConkey, who I mentioned, Njoku, if you want to go double tight end still in there. I think that's going to leave us with Ingram as an option. I don't hate the Ingram double tight end. Odunze, if you want to add in another receiving weapon for Williams and just go super heavy in that one. A lot of good options there. So hit that like button. Get me to 30 likes. So put out that shorter video. It's gonna be a stretch to get that one in. It's 9 o'clock already. Had to record this in the morning. I fell asleep when I was doing my research last night, so I woke up with the computer on my lap. But hit that like buttons. Hit subscribe. Looking for 1,100 subscribers. I need 30 left. Other than that, let me get this thing up.